So now I will give the floor to the first session of the afternoon, which is based on adapting to a changing environment. And the moderator of the first part of the session will be our Vice Chairman, Brian Kavanagh. Brian.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose, seeing as the timekeeping was so bad by the Chairman this morning, it falls to the Vice Chairman, the newly elected Vice Chairman, to get us back on track this afternoon. You're all very welcome here. Charles Darwin, the famous English author and naturalist, once said, "It's not the strongest of the species that will survive, nor the most intelligent. It is the one which is most adaptable to change." This afternoon, we will examine how racing and other industries are adapting to the changing environment. In the first session, we will have three excellent speakers from our own industry who will give three very different perspectives on the situation in their country. After the break, Winfrey will take over and look at the current challenges and measures in other industries, with particular emphasis on sports betting and intellectual property rights. I look forward to some lively discussion and some interesting questions for the speakers. As we heard this morning from Aki, the world is changing and changing faster than ever before. Just turn the clock back 10 years. In 2002, the World Wide Web lived inside big, box-like computers. Facebook and Twitter had not been heard of, and mobile phones were just phones, not the offices and production studios they are now. 2002 also saw the introduction of the euro notes and coins, and we all wondered if it would last as a currency. That's probably not a great example of change, because we're all still wondering if it will last as a currency. There are two main areas of change I think we need to look at today: the economy and technology. While the economic challenges are severe at the moment, the economy has always been in a constant state of flux ever since the Darley Arabian, the Godolphin and the Barley Turk first came to England and organised thoroughbred racing started. Racing has always had to cope with economic challenges. Indeed, one of the notable features and advantages of racing is its continuity and its longevity. The Epsom Derby has been run over the same track since 1784, and Weatherby's are still dutifully recording the bloodlines of the horses running in it now as they were then. The key thing for racing is to survive and adapt during periods of downturn and change, and retain our customers so we can take advantage when times are better. Notwithstanding the cyclical nature which I've just referred to, we are undoubtedly trying to plot a course for racing in the middle of the greatest economic downturn since the 1930s. World Trade Organization figures show a steep reduction in the annual growth rate in world trade for 2011 and 2012. As Aki said, European sovereign debt, oil prices, and political instability are among the main causes, and none of these are likely to improve in the future. The Eurozone is moving closer to recession. The Guardian has recently stated that the UK is in a double-dip recession, and falling US and Chinese demand will slow any export-led recovery. Ireland has been one of the worst affected countries, with a property collapse and a banking crisis pushing national debt from 20% of GDP in 2007 to 75% in 2011. Our foal crop, which was 12,500 in 2007, is now back to 7,500, as Aki showed this morning. While economies will ebb and flow, the pace of technology and technological change, however, is a different story. This is permanent, it's not cyclical, and it's likely to accelerate. A recent IBM study of over 1,700 senior executives from 19 industries in 64 countries worldwide identified 4 shared concerns. These were seen by these executives as game changers to which all businesses must adapt in order to be able to survive. They all related to technology. They were the data explosion, social media, the proliferation of channels and devices, and shifting customer demographics. Technological change can completely disrupt previously stable businesses or products. For instance, where is the Sony Walkman now? CDs, DVDs, and books are increasingly being downloaded or ordered online, and as a result, those high street shops are closing. TV has changed from offering fixed programs to on-demand digital on the platform of your choice. And we are now watching as newspapers struggle to preserve their traditional model while they move online. Change is everywhere, and Darwin was right. So this afternoon we will examine how is racing coping with change, both to the economy and technology. The economic downturn inevitably leads to pressure on government finances. and a tougher battle to gain and hold political support. Many aspects of racing are at the higher end of discretionary spend, so an economic slowdown is immediately felt in racing. However, as well as the obvious threats, change also means a fantastic series of opportunities. Racing is now more accessible to a wider audience than it ever has been before. Everybody is familiar with the saying, never waste a good crisis. And perversely, I believe that an economic downturn may actually be a good time to be talking to government about the value and contribution of the industry. This has certainly been the case, unfortunately, in Ireland over the last 4 years. At the height of our economic boom, with almost full employment, it was very difficult for us to convince politicians of the worth of our industry and the merits of supporting it. However, with the recession has come a greater understanding and appreciation of our industry. Why is this? In Ireland, racing and thoroughbred breeding are environmentally friendly activities. They are low-intensive uses of large parcels of land. They are labour-intensive. They create jobs in rural areas where alternative employment is scarce. And in our case, they can lead to significant foreign direct investment and exports. Ireland, as you know, is the largest producer of thoroughbreds in the EU and exports 2/3 of our produce every year. We have found that in a time of recession and high unemployment, government is actually more receptive to these messages. There's not many industries that Ireland is a world leader at, and racing and breeding is one, and we've been able to emphasise that message in the difficult times. The result of this is that over the coming months, the Irish government intends to prepare new legislation to restructure the funding of our industry and provide it with a more secure long-term basis. A second area which Ireland has had to adapt to in the difficult economic climate is to reduce our costs of production. Stud fees, training fees and transport costs have all fallen significantly, and the Turf Club and Horse Racing Ireland have both cut their costs by more than 25%. That's despite an increase in the number of fixtures and a specific policy of keeping prize money levels in Ireland as high as possible. Ireland will have an average race value of €18,000 per race in 2012 and a minimum value of any race of €7,000. A third strategy which we have had to adopt has been to accept that domestic demand for racing will be static for some time. So Ireland has to increasingly look overseas for new owners and breeders. Our marketing agencies have become ever more active in pursuing owners, breeders, and indeed racegoers now in various markets throughout the world. On the issue of technology, it's interesting to note that in 2007, the ratio of our revenue between betting tax revenue and media rights revenue in Ireland was 85-15 in favour of betting tax. 85% of our revenue came from betting tax, 15% from media rights. This year, that ratio will move to 2/3 from betting duty and 1/3 from media rights. Effectively, the value of media rights has doubled in importance to Irish racing in those 5 years. This shows the increasing value and indeed the potential for racing's media rights, all of which is driven by technology. Ireland is just one of a number of racing authorities that are increasingly taking control of their rights and through technology, maximising their value worldwide. Anyway, enough about Ireland. As I said earlier, the speakers today come from a variety of different environments, and it will be fascinating to hear how they're coping with changes in their own environments. First up, Bertrand Bilingue, chairman of France Gallo, will make the keynote address to the conference, illustrating his views on racing and on how France is able to defend the very favourable relationship between racing and betting that we all envy so much. Our second speaker, the Honourable Michael Duffy, chairman of the Australian Racing Board, will explain how Australia is coping with the massive changes which technology has brought to the betting industry there, and also the challenges provided by Australia's unique geographical location. Our third speaker, Dr. Francesco Ruffo della Scaletta, who's the senior racing executive in Italy, will illustrate for us the well-documented difficulties which the Italian racing industry has experienced and how they're coping with it. I can personally vouch for this, as last January when we were attending an EMHF meeting in Rome, Francesco had to leave us at lunchtime because there was a protest march of approximately 5,000 people from the industry outside the Italian Parliament demanding reform in the sector. I'm sure you'll agree that they make a very interesting combination, and I look forward to hearing what they have to say. So without any further ado, I'd like to call our first speaker, Bertrand Bilingue, to come forward. Bertrand is a very distinguished speaker with a background in law. He's a great friend to very many people in this room. And on behalf of all of us, Bertrand, I'd just like to thank you and everybody in France Gallo for your hospitality over the weekend and for the wonderful experience we had at Longchamp yesterday. Bertrand is a graduate of the Institute of Political Studies in Bordeaux and a Doctor of Law. He pursued a long and distinguished career in the insurance industry, culminating in 1997 as President and Director General of GAN International. As we all know, from 1997 to 2009, Bertrand was Director General of the PMU and Chairman of the European Party Mutual Association. Bertrand and indeed his family have a lifelong association with horse racing, both as an owner and as a steward. This association reached its pinnacle last year when Bertrand was elected as Chairman of France Gallo. That is all for none, however, because we all know that Bertrand's real claim to fame is that he is married to the most important person in French racing. So I'll hand over to Bertrand. I look forward to hearing his views.